First of all, by way of introduction, we're going to talk about this a little later as well, but closing big deals is literally a separate side of your business, and you have to look at it that way. The sales cycle is so much longer, the sales approach is so different that it really has to be basically a separate side of your business. So let's get right into this first slide here. First of all, let's talk about our target market. So we have this completely separate side of our business called closing big deals. So what's our target market? What's a big deal? First of all, a big deal is a company that processes over $100,000 per month. This is my definition. Search for businesses that do $2.5 million per year in sales or more. And if they do $2.5 million in sales per year or more, the odds are they probably do at least $1.2 million a year in credit card processing for most retail and restaurant locations. Also, if they have 5 or more locations, it's probably a big deal, and you can use Google Maps for that. So maybe you're in your local market, you see that, wow, there's 2 locations. I didn't realize there was that many. Then what you do is go to Google Maps, type in that business name and your zip code, and see how many come up on Google Maps. You can zoom out and see how many come up there, and you'd be surprised. There might be a lot of businesses that you didn't realize they had that many locations. Next, they have a central corporate office. So if they have a central corporate office, that would be considered a big deal, where, even if they only have a few locations, but they have a central office, then you're going to have to treat that like a big deal, because there's going to be one person that's responsible for the decision for all of these locations. Start with a list of 30 plus before you get into this. Now, this is really, really important that you understand. Many agents get into this idea of selling big businesses, and the way they get into it is by finding one deal and really working that one deal. That is not a good way to get into this business. You're just going to waste your time, because it's a numbers game, and it's going to take a lot of businesses for you to close one. And if you just have one of these deals, it's going to always be hanging over you like, man, I could make $1,000 per month off of this one account. All I need to do is get this deal closed, and it's going to dominate your thinking and your organizational process and your time management, and that's a big mistake. Get 30 plus deals so that it minimizes the importance of any one particular deal, and then just start working them, because it's going to take a while to get one closed. Let's talk about what's not a big deal. Franchise operations are usually not a big deal if the franchise owners make their own individual decision about their processing vendor. So you have to kind of identify that, but that's an example. Basically, any deal where the decision is made on a per location basis is not a big deal. You would just approach those like any other deal. The requirements to sell a big deal, first of all, you have to have a full understanding of the cost structure. If I was to ask you and say on an IP connection with a major merchant on a global platform, what is the cost per transaction that you pay? If you don't know the answer to that question, you're not ready to sell big deals yet. Now, you can learn that, but you're not ready to sell it yet. Next, you've got to have confidence in your knowledge of industry basics and competitors. So you need to have a general knowledge of how the industry works. You need to have a general knowledge of installations and how to switch over a point of sale system, things like that. And also competitors. Who are your main competitors? What are they offering in your market? You need to know that. Also, you're going to have several references in the same industry. Now, we talk about that more in detail later, but if you don't have a few references in the same industry type, then I wouldn't even start going after the big deals. So if I had a couple restaurants that were a little bit larger restaurants in my local market and I'd been servicing them for a few months, I might start to go after larger restaurant chains because I have those references of the large restaurants that I can use. Sometimes, though, you don't want to go after huge deals, because if you go after a really big deal, like a 100-location deal, they're going to want a specific reference of another business of similar size that you're working with. So that's going to be an issue. Secondly, you're going to have an organizational, next, you're going to have an organizational system for a longer sales cycle. Keep in mind that this is a closed universe. Now, let me explain both of these, what I'm talking about here, okay? You have to have an organizational system that allows you to, make adjustments for this closed universe. There's not that many big businesses in your local market that you can close. There might only be 100 or 150 versus, regular businesses, you might have 5,000. So you can't afford to lose contact with one of these 150 businesses. Once you've made contact and once you're working that deal, You have to stay in contact with them if you want to succeed in this side of the industry. Otherwise, again, you're really get into wasting time. And you're going to hear me say wasting time a lot because I found that 99% of the agents that try to sell big deals are literally just wasting their time. You have to do this the right way. And you have to have an organizational system. Now, I'll tell you mine is really, really easy. I use Google Calendar. And if I get somebody that says, call me back in July, then I put a note in a calendar event for July 1st, and it sends me an email alert that says, July 1st, contact this merchant. So it's real easy, but you got to have an organizational system in place that you're actually going to use and that you're going to stay up on. Confidence to meet with business savvy people. I really thought about how to describe this to you, and it's just very difficult to describe. But the difference between sitting down and talking with a small business owner and sitting down and talking with a company financial officer could not be more different. It's just a totally different experience. It's hard for me to even explain it. The best way I can explain it to you is this: get some good advisors that are business savvy and spend time with them. This is probably the best way to prepare. Now, let me give you a free resource, and I'll type it in here in the chat bar. If you guys have not yet gone to score.org, I just posted it down there in the chat box, score.org, SCORE.org. If you have not been to that website, you are losing out on a huge free resource, probably one of the best resources in your local market. If I had to choose between being a part of the small business clubs in my area and being a part of SCORE, I would choose SCORE every single time. SCORE.org is they are retired. It's a group of local retired executives and business owners that offer free business advice to entrepreneurs in the local area. I mean, come on, you can't get any better than that. That's just amazing to me that the organization even exists. I think is incredible. And anyway, make a long story short, go to score.org and find a local, advisor and sit down and talk with them. Explain your business plan to them. Explain how you want to grow your business. Talk to them, okay? And have some humility and realize these are people that are very intelligent and very smart about business. And you might go in with an idea and they might say that's a stupid idea. And you know what? They're probably right because these are people that are seasoned in business and they're business savvy. But as far as closing big deals, the reason I bring that up is you've got to have some experience sitting down and talking with people that are business savvy and that are experienced so you can understand how to communicate with them and how to interact with them. And score.org, your local SCORE chapter, is a great way to do that. Or maybe some local business people that maybe your family has maybe you have a family friend that's a company financial officer or a CEO of a company. And if you do, that's great. Leverage that resource and just say, hey, can I take you to lunch? I just want to talk about business. I want to get your feedback. And again, it's not even as much what you talk about as just the fact that you're talking to someone like that on a regular basis. That is going to help you more than anything else when you get to the final closing stages of these big deals. It's really, really going to help you if you do that. All right, next. Getting the process started. As you are prospecting, make a list of potential big deals. So this is the best way to make your list. Now, what I would recommend that you do is get a list of about 30 or so before you even start calling. And here's how you get that list. When you're out in the field and you walk into a business, you guys all know this happens to you probably a lot. You go into a business and maybe 1 out of every 10 or 15 or 20 businesses you walk into will say something like, hey, we're corporate owned. They might say, our corporate office makes that decision. We don't really handle that. They might say, Bill is at XYZ location today, and he handles that. That would send off some alerts in your mind, like, okay, they have multiple locations. They might say, you need to talk to our head of finance. Things like that. Those should all be red flags to you that this might be a big deal. Then you're going to have to do your research. You'll need to ask a lot of questions to the store manager, get them on your side, and find out what you need to know. So if you go into a place and they say, you know what, our corporate office handles that, then don't let them just walk away. Tell them and be honest with them and say, you know what, we deal with a lot of medium to large businesses, and if you don't mind it, could I ask a couple questions? Do you know who I should call at the corporate office that handles that? And you'd be surprised. They might say, yeah, Barb's the one that handles that. I know her really well. And next thing you know, you're able to call and say, hey, Barb, Bob gave me your information because, he knows me there in the local market and I'd like to get involved in the bidding process. So talk to the store manager, find out if it's a regional office or a nationwide office. Guys, I've sold Dairy Queens before. Most Dairy Queens are handled by one franchise owner that owns 15 or 20 of them. So, that can be a big deal. Pizza Huts can be the same way. You'd be surprised. Some of these brands that you would never think you could get into, a lot of times they're handled by a regional office, and the regional office is the one that makes the decision for the vendors. So, it's actually not that difficult. It might be, you might go to a Dairy Queen and the regional office for that Dairy Queen, thing is an hour away. So, you never know. When you go into a business, that's why in my prospecting videos I say I go into every single business, and I really do, just about. I mean, there's very few businesses other than certain business types I don't want to go into, like lawyers' offices and doctors' offices, but that's just personal preference. But as far as like restaurants and retail locations, I pretty much go to every single one because I want to try to generate, big deal leads as well as, sell small businesses. So ask a lot of questions to the store manager, find out as much as you can, because again, you're not trying to sell them, and they know that, so they're going to let their guard down, and they'll really open up. I mean, they'll tell you everything you need to know. I'm always surprised about that. I'll go into a place. I mean, just what was it? A few months ago, I went into a place. It's a candy place. It's real big out here in Pennsylvania. And I'd never contacted them before, and the store manager was like, yeah, the person you need to talk to is Joe. Here's his number. Here's his extension. And he's normally there on Mondays and Tuesdays. I mean, they were giving me just all this information. I'm just writing it down but thinking, wow, this is unreal. And I was able to give him an estimate about 2 weeks ago, and so I'm kind of following up on that one. That just added another lead to my, to my list of leads. Making the first call. Okay, so now you have this big list of businesses. You got like 30 big businesses on your list. So now you need to start calling them. What do? First of all, start with a call, not a visit, even if they're local. If you walk in, it makes you seem unprofessional. It makes you seem like you're just some local sales guy and you just kind of wandered in and you happen to wander into a corporate location, all right? Don't do that. They always look at that poorly. Don't waste your time in person. This is a numbers game. And again, you're not going to know if you even have a chance to close this deal until you call and find out who the right person is. Local vendor for their credit card processing. How do I get into the bidding process for your credit card processing services? Now, here's a core difference between your local approach, small business sales, and your big deal side. One of the primary differences is your brand and how you present yourself. When you go to small businesses, you want to be a small business, right? So you want to go in and, hey, I'm James Shepard. I'm the local small business owner, and that kind of thing. But it's the opposite with the big companies. If you're selling a big company, then guess what you want to be? You want to be a big company. So because what these big businesses want to hear is stable, large procedures, tech support. They want to know that there's a robust company that's backing you up. So talk to whomever you get on the phone. Remember that decisions have many layers. There's usually not a decision maker. Rather, there are key people that have a stake in the decision. And all of them are very important to your, deal. So, you might, again, a business that has 15 locations, the secretary or administrative assistant in that business probably has as much power as anyone else to make that decision. I'm telling you guys, if that secretary says, boy, I got a real good feeling about James, I feel like he's going to take care of things for us, and I think I can work with him to get this reporting problem fixed that we're having with our other company. Boy, I'll tell you what, I got about a 90% chance of closing that deal just because I made the secretary happy. So, keep in mind who you're talking to. Now, if you're talking to a business that's got 100 locations, well, the secretary probably doesn't have very much clout there. But if they got 10, 15 locations, that secretary is pretty powerful because she's probably one of 3 or 4 full-time employees at the corporate office. So she's got like a 1/3 stake in this. She's the one that's going to be doing all of the bookkeeping. And so, it's really very important. I've been in a lot of meetings where the owner had the secretary come in, and she was the one that asked me all the questions, and the guy just sat there and listened to her. And then when I got done talking, he kind of looked at the secretary, and she looked at him and kind of nodded. And he was like, okay, we'll give it a shot, So you never know who's making the decision. So, be very careful. And when you talk to people, find out what they know about the credit card processing and try to get in a good conversation with them because everybody is important in the decision-making process here. And again, also lastly, and then I'll move to the next one here, but again, just to clarify, I mean, it's not just one person, it's normally layers. So normally you have to sell one person so you can have the opportunity to sell somebody else so that you can have the opportunity to sell the decision maker. Okay, that's usually how it works in these bigger companies. And again, the bigger the company, the more layers you have to get through. You want to say things like, we have a custom program for medium to large clients with a very low cost structure. Use a specific pitch on the phone. But again, your opening line up here, we went over it a second ago, but the opening line is pretty much always the same. How do I get into the bidding process for your credit card processing services? All right. Most of these large corporate locations have figured out that if they take calls from vendors and salespeople year-round, that they would not get anything else done. So they don't do that. What they do is they open up the bidding process every so often, and it might be only every couple of years. They might say, hey, we made a commitment to this other company for 3 years, and we have a real hefty cancellation fee, and we're not interested in looking around until the end of that 3 years is up, which is next November, okay? If they say that, you say, okay, hey, no problem at all. Well, I'll follow up with you next October and, see where you guys are at. You put it in your schedule for October. So, you got to, do what the people want you to do, and you have to have a longer sales cycle here, okay? Actually, let me give you one other tip real quick, and then we'll get on to this next slide I just pulled up. One other tip is, okay, if they do tell you, hey, we don't take bids again until next October or whatever, I do have one line that I use that seems to work pretty well for me. I say, hey, let me ask you a huge favor, and I realize this is a big favor to ask because I know you guys aren't taking bids right now. This is what I'd really like to do. I am fine with the fact that you're not going to be looking at an estimate I would provide you until next October. However, just because I am a local vendor and I would like to be on the top of the list as far as the first ones that you look at, would you mind if I worked with your secretary or administrative assistant and just put together a price comparison now, sent that over to you guys so you could have it on file, and then I'll follow up in October with you as you requested and just remind you about the fact that I already have that estimate in. And so I'll try to do that, and a lot of times that'll work. And they'll have that on file, and I'll be like on the top of the list. And sometimes they get it back, and they go, "Good night, this guy's going to save us $6,000 a month. We're not waiting until next November, And so that will work. And so sometimes that's what I do, and trying to get my foot in the door a little earlier. But again, I would say half the time that doesn't work. Maybe 70% of the time that doesn't work, and they say, "No, James, I'm sorry, we don't want to invest the time in that right now. We'll do that next October or November." And I say, "Okay, that's fine. I'll put it in my schedule," and I do put it in my schedule and call them back. The main concern, okay, what makes them choose you? So let's talk about how to sell these people. Okay, so you got your list. You went in and you got the opening call done, and now you're starting to deal with them a little bit. Maybe they gave you a statement to do an estimate on. Now, if they ask you, well, what do you need? You need a statement, a credit card processing statement from their lowest volume location, from their highest volume location, and possibly another, like a middle volume location. Because a lot of times what will happen is you'll give them an estimate, and they'll say, well, that was a good estimate, but that was our lowest volume location or whatever. So I try to get 3 statements. Again, this is for a multi-location business. Now, what is going to sell them? So you're going to go back in and make a presentation now, all right? Well, let's talk about what's going to sell these people, okay? Number one, their main concern is always risk. Realize this, okay? They are worried about the risk of making a poor choice. If they make a poor choice, they are going to be held accountable for it, and, the boss is not going to be happy, or the CEO is not going to be happy if they make a poor choice. So they are worried about risk. Understand that, guys. That is the number one concern. Before you get into price, you have to eliminate or minimize the risk of switching over to you. So just understand that. When you first go in and when they give you these objections, realize that their objections are, I'm worried that I'm going to get screwed, and that's going to make me get in trouble with the CEO or whatever. If you can eliminate risk, it will place you on the short list, and then it's all about cost and post-sale service. So let's say you're going to pick somebody and they've got 30 locations, all right? The first thing they're going to do is they're going to try to evaluate, now, can this person actually do this deal? Are they going to be able to take care of the tech support? Are they going to be able to take care of all the issues that are going to come up? Are they going to be able to really switch us and do a good job? Are they going to be able to handle our volume? And so they're trying to answer all of the risk questions, and that's just kind of a hurdle you have to jump over. If you can't get over that hurdle, then you're not even going to be on the list of possible candidates to switch to. All right. So keep that in mind. It's going to be risk. Next, once you get past the risk, now it's all about the cost. Okay, once you get past the risk, it's going to be about the cost, and it's also going to be about the post-sale service. What are you going to do after they sign the documents? How are you going to handle this project? And again, don't kid yourself. This is a major project. You might make $1,000 or $2,000 a month off of one of these sales, but it's not easy. It's not like, that money is just going to fall in your lap. You're probably, once you make that sale, you're probably going to work on that deal for 20 hours a week for a month in order to make that deal happen if it's a big deal, because again, you're going to have to drive to all these locations, or you're going to have to work out some other way to do the install, and you're going to have to work with their POS provider, and you're going to have to talk to the corporate office, and you're going to have to change the way the reporting is done. You're going to have to talk to North American Bank Card and customize the statement, and who knows what else. These are not easy. It's not like this is easy money. Even once you get the sale, it's difficult. And so you got to be prepared for that, and you need to let them know that you're prepared for that. Say, hey, look, I'm ready to make this deal happen. Here's what I'm going to do. I already know for a fact I'm going to dedicate at least 10 to 15 hours a week just to your account for the first month, and I'm going to make sure that all the locations are switched. When you tell people that kind of stuff before they buy, it really is going to put you at the top of the list, because they're going to say, wow, here's a local guy that already has looked at his schedule, and he's ready to clear out 10 to 20 hours a week for us. And and say, hey, this is going to be a keystone account for me, and I am going to take care of it for you. And tell them that and make them feel important. That's really going to help you close the deal. They're going to require valid references, and they will check them out. They are usually well connected. Okay, let me give you a real common role play. Okay. This is what happens for me a lot of times. I'll go into a business, and let's say it's a restaurant, big restaurant company, and we're talking, and they're like, hey, this sounds pretty good, James. Now, who are your references? Who can I call? And I'll say, well, you know what? Over at XYZ restaurant, I installed theirs, a couple weeks ago, and they'll say, oh, XYZ, okay, yeah, I'll call Don over there. He's the CEO. I'll give him a call here on his cell phone, and we'll see how that's working out for him. That is how it goes. These guys are connected. They know everybody in the industry. So the last thing you want to do is say a client's name thinking that they're not going to check up. They're probably going to call them right in front of you. Like, well, I do this restaurant, and they don't even know if it's a small restaurant, and they're like, well, I don't even know who that is. It's almost like, this must not be a legitimate reference, So keep that in mind. The references are going to be real key with this. A sales tip, okay? Do what they ask you to do exactly, all right? This is not like these other small deals. These small deals are like, yeah, the owner will be in here on Thursday. You could swing back by. Now, in reality, you might come back the next day and say, hey, I was in the area, thought I'd check back, and the owner might be there, and that might be fine. That's not the case with big deals. If they tell you to come back on Thursday, come back on Thursday. If they tell you to call at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time a week from Monday, then do that. Do exactly what they ask you to do. If they say, we need an estimate before we can give you a statement, we need a set of your prices, do that. Do whatever they ask you to do exactly the way that they ask you to do it. That's going to build trust, and there's no way around it. They're not going to fudge on that, all right? They know how they want this done. They've gone through the vendor process before. They have procedures in place, so just do what they ask you to do, all right? Next. Scheduling and expectations. This is our last slide. First of all, realize, again, we talked about this earlier, this is a separate business from your other processing business, and you need to schedule it completely separate. Use a long-term planning tool with notifications. Again, I use Google Maps, but use something where you have some kind of a system that's going to pop up and remind you when you need to call people back as far as different times in the month and things like that. Use a long-term planning tool with notifications. Track your time with this approach and minimize your investment of time up front. Now, guys, again, this is a long-term sales cycle. It's a long-term investment of time. So get 30 businesses. Maybe you work on that. Maybe you call through that list, once a week or once a month. And, you want to minimize your time investment until you get a really good fish on the hook. And when I say a fish on the hook, I mean until you get a statement. If you don't have a processing statement, you don't have a prospect. So keep pushing forward with these deals, but minimize your time investment until you get at least 3 big deals, all right? You got to keep your expectations low on these. because otherwise you're going to sound desperate or you're going to sound like you need this deal. Let me give you a tip. If you get to the point where you feel like I need this big deal, stop selling big deals because you're going to waste your time. You will not sell a big deal if you feel like you need to sell it. It's just impossible. You have to the big deals have to be this side thing that doesn't really, it's not a big deal to you. You know, it's not a major part of your business right now. It's just something you're working on. It's like a hobby. You know, you have this hobby on the side, and if you get real lucky, it might all of a sudden pay you a couple $1,000s a month. Then you can invest some serious time and effort and planning into that side of your business. But until you've got 2 or 3 of these big deals under your belt, don't waste a lot of time with it, guys, because it's really difficult. And it can take a lot of your time if you're not careful. You got to track your time and say, man, I'm only going to spend, you know, no more than 2 or 3 hours a week on this project of closing big deals. But again, if you have the discipline to, you know, segment this side of your business off and actually spend a certain amount of time on it, then go for it. You know, it's a great deal. And guys, I will tell you, the value of these accounts is really hard for me to even explain to you. You know, I mean, I've done quite a few deals where my monthly profit was $500 to $1,000 or more. We have agents on our team that have closed deals where they were $2,000 to $3,000 or more, and and most of them, they only have 1 or 2 of these big deals like that. So you can really make this a serious part of your business, but it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some patience, and it's going to take a lot of organization. So if you want to go after this side of your business, my best advice is get organized, create a totally separate system to manage this side of your business, different expectations, track your time, be careful that it doesn't mess up your existing business at all, and don't allow yourself to get emotionally attached to 1 or 2 of these big accounts because it's a numbers game. And the difference, guys, is that you might get all the way to the very end of this process, and with a normal business, you might close them at 50%. If you have the statement and you're showing savings, you might close that at 50% because it's just you. You're the only one bidding. But with these big accounts, it's normally you and 15 other companies. So even if you get to the very end, it's still difficult. It's not a walk in the park. So, understand that you're playing a numbers game, and, you're going to have to really work at this, and you're going to slowly get better at it, but it's going to take a long time. It's probably going to take you a year before you're really good at this. And I would say if you started following my methods today, then I would say 6 months from now would probably be the earliest you would expect to close your first deal. And a year from now is when you would actually feel like you're starting to get pretty good at it. Okay, so have the right expectations, but other than that, go for it because it's an awesome opportunity. And again, a couple of these deals you close could be huge. So, all right, I'm going to take some questions. So type your questions over in the question box. Tony's got a question here. Can you hear me, Tony? Hold on here. All right, try that again. Tony, are you there? Let's see. I'm not hearing Tony. Okay, Tony, you might want to type it out. I can't get your hand is raised, but I can't get it unmuted. So let's see. We got a question from Jeff. Let's see here. To start working. Jeff, I don't understand your question. When is the best time to start working this part of the business? I guess to answer your question, Jeff, if I understand it correctly, I think you're asking when is the best time to start this business. I would say once you have those requirements fulfilled at the beginning, it's really all about the confidence and the industry knowledge. So, I mean, once you've got the confidence and the industry knowledge, go for it. Because again, this is a huge part of your business. It can be in the future, but you do have to have just the basic core stuff down first. So, Tony, I'm going to try to unmute you again and see if it works. Tony, are you there? Okay, I'm not hearing you there. And again, I apologize. Maybe it's something on my end. I'm not able to get that audio through. Let's see who else we got on the call today. Anybody else have any questions for me? Let me see if I have any others over here. Yeah, Tony, I see that you can hear me, but I can't hear you. Do you want to type your question out over to the right, Tony, and I'll answer that question. Anybody have any other questions real quick? I'd be glad to answer them for you on closing the big deals. Or if you have a question about anything else, if you're working on a deal and you just have a general question for me, go ahead and ask it. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have while I'm on the webinar right now. Let's see, anybody else? We don't have anybody with their hand raised, and I'm waiting for Tony to type out a question. Tony, I'm going to unmute you again. Can you hear me, Tony? All right, we can't hear you though, Tony. Okay, Matt. Let's see. We've got a couple others now. Let's see. Let me get. Matt's got his hand raised. Matt, can you hear me?
I can indeed.
Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, so in the event that they ask you that a corporation would ask you for the rates before they will give you this statement, what kind of rates? Because I'm assuming that on these larger deals, most of them are going to be doing a lot of transactions.
Right.
So would you go really low on Interchange Plus to start with?
Yeah, it's really going to depend so much on the industry type. I handle them on a case-by-case basis. And again, this will kind of go back to knowing what your competitors are going to offer for that size business. Retail stores get the worst prices. Restaurants get a little bit better prices. Gas stations and large individual location retail stores get the best prices. So, and hotel chains also get really good prices. So anytime you're dealing with one location that's humongous that does like, $500,000 or $1 million a month, those kind of businesses are always getting the best prices. The worst prices are going to your smaller retail stores where they have like 50 retail stores that do $60,000 per location. Those are usually going to get the worst prices. Again, still much lower than your normal retail store, but they're going to get the worst prices. So, yeah, does that answer your question?
Okay. It did. How would you approach this? I understand. I like the way you said about. I wanted to find out some more about getting in on the bidding process.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you don't want to sound, kind of desperate. So, what would be kind of an opening you would use?
Well, again, the thing you have to realize here, Matt, is that the opening you're giving is not usually the opening is not really to anyone that you have no idea who you're going to be talking to anyway. So I keep the opening really short. That literally is my opening. That's all I say. I call and I say, this is exactly what I do. I call them and say, hi, my name is James Shepard, and we have a special program for medium to large business types with a lower cost structure. And the reason I was calling is just that, I'd like to get involved as a vendor. I'd like to get involved in the bidding process for your credit card processing services. How do you guys handle that? Is there a certain time of year when you open up the bidding process, or are you open to getting bids right now? And that's what I ask. And just like when you go into a regular small business and they say, if you ask, who are you using for your credit card processing, normally the response you're going to get is, well, let me go get Bob. And it's the same way with the big companies. If you open like that, I open like that no matter who I'm talking to because I don't know who I'm talking to. Normally they say, oh, you know what, you're going to need to talk to, Joe, he's the CFO, or you're going to need to talk to our accounting department or whatever, and then they'll transfer me over, or they'll give me a name and number of somebody, that I can talk with.
Okay.
So one other tip I'll give you guys on that note, I don't leave very many messages starting out. I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. I really am going to try at least 3 times to actually get through to the right person before I leave a message, just as a little side tip there about that. Okay, now we got some more questions rolling in here. Let's see what we got here. Okay, Jeremy asks, there is a recording studio. The owner mentioned he wants a phone swipe. Is he going to need an authorized .net account also, or will the phone swipe alone be sufficient? Jeremy, it really depends on how he's using it. How often he's using it. I would guess for a recording studio, a phone swipe probably would be sufficient because, I doubt he's taking more than 1 or 2 transactions a day, if that. So phone swipe would be fine because you can also take orders over the phone through the phone swipe. Like someone can call him, obviously, on another line, and he can process these transactions through the phone swipe, or they could call him on his phone, he could write down the information and then key it into the phone swipe. So I would say in that situation, phone swipe would be sufficient. Jeff, let's see, I think I already answered that question there for Jeff. Somebody else had their hand raised. Was it, who was that? What I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute all the lines here. It might get loud for a minute. If you have another question and I somehow missed you, anybody got another question? All the lines are unmuted. No other questions. Okay, we don't have any there. Let me look real quick one more time here at the list. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry. Got one more. Jeff asks, do you do church groups? No, I don't. And I have in the past, but church groups, I talked about this before on a call. Oh, and by the way, I'm sorry, guys, I do see the other questions. I'll get to these in just a second. But, yeah, let me answer this question about churches. as a general rule, churches kind of do end up in the big business type deal just because the decision-making process is so difficult. There's so many people involved. And that's why I don't go after them, because their volume and profit doesn't normally justify that investment of time. And again, that's quite a lot coming from me since I'm a youth pastor. You would think I would really be going after those. But I've just found that again, the sales cycle is about the same as a big business, but the profit is less than a regular sized business for most of these churches. So no, I don't really go after those very much. Now, that's not saying, if there's a church that has, 40,000 active members or 10,000 active members, then yeah, go for it. It's just like any other big deal. I would approach it exactly the same way, and they're going to have procedures in place for vendors just like any other business. Tony asks, I'm sorry. I answered Tony's question already about interchange plus pricing. Okay, I got all those. Anybody else have a question? You can raise your hand or type it in the question box. Thanks everybody very much. Have a great day.